Picture a primitive guy. Let's call him Grog. He is out in the wild roughly 11,000 years ago, and he is hungry. The textbook story of human civilization says Grog is gathering handfuls of wild wheat purely to survive. The narrative we all learned in school follows a very sensible progression. Humans gathered wild wheat, which led to grinding that grain. We planted crops, we baked bread, we built houses, and eventually we created modern cities. Bread is practical. Bread is breakfast. But there is a practical flaw in that logic. If you gather mashed up wild grain and leave it sitting in the rain for a few days, it does not bake. It ferments. It turns into a bubbly, sour liquid. A sensible caveman would throw it out. If Grog drank that murky cup instead of tossing it, then the entire foundational story of human civilization is running in reverse. Serious, sober archaeologists have been arguing about this exact scenario at academic conferences since at least 1953. The debate centers on whether the first farmers were chasing a reliable loaf of bread or a decent buzz. For decades, the bread camp won by default. Now, a growing number of researchers hypothesize that humans deliberately gathered, ground, and soaked wild wheat with the explicit intent to brew alcohol. If beer came first, the reason humans stopped wandering and started planting is flipped. We did not settle down because we were starving. We settled down to socialize and celebrate. To find out why early humans would want to brew a drink, we have to look past humans entirely. We have to rewind about 10 million years, back to our primate ancestors living in the trees. A biologist named Robert Dudley proposed the drunken monkey hypothesis. When fruit gets soft, sweet, and falls to the ground, wild yeast moves in and turns those sugars into alcohol. That smell of booze drifting through the jungle acted as a dinner bell. It told those primates exactly where to find high-calorie, ripe food. This timeline tracks a specific evolutionary mutation in our DNA back 10 million years. Right around the time our ancestors started eating that fallen fruit, they received a molecular upgrade to a gene called ADH4, allowing their bodies to properly metabolize alcohol. We can still watch this active biological trait in the wild. Researchers studying chimpanzees in the forests of Uganda and the Ivory Coast tracked the alcohol content in the fruit the chimps were eating. They found that an average wild chimp casually consumes the equivalent of 2 standard drinks every single day. They are just eating breakfast. The taste for alcohol was not dreamed up by humans around a campfire. We inherited it as a pre-installed biological survival feature. Having a biological craving is one thing, but running a brewery takes intent. For that, we go to Turkey 11,000 years ago to a massive site called Göbekli Tepe. Hunter-gatherers carved and hauled these massive stone pillars to build a complex temple long before the invention of agriculture. Tucked inside those massive stone rings, archaeologists found a specific anomaly: giant limestone tubs. These vessels could hold up to 160 liters of liquid. That volume is designed for massive crowds. When scientists scraped the residue off the inside of some of these specific tubs, they found traces of calcium oxalate. In the brewing world, that is known as beer stone, the crusty buildup that happens when you mash and ferment grain. This map shows the location of Göbekli Tepe. It sits right next to a mountain called Karajadağ, the exact birthplace of the world's first domesticated wheat. The geography aligns perfectly. Early farmed grain grew directly next door to ancient drinking tubs. The very first farmed wheat in human history was cultivated specifically next door to the world's oldest communal party venue. This drive to brew was not limited to an isolated group in Turkey. 9,000 years ago in Jiahu, China, people who had never met the builders of Göbekli Tepe were fermenting their own drinks. Archaeochemists analyzed the residue inside clay jars from the Chinese site and found a deliberate, complex cocktail recipe. Somebody in China was combining rice, honey, and hawthorn berries or wild grapes to mix a prehistoric drink. The mechanism making this possible everywhere is universal. Invisible natural yeasts are present globally, and early humans learned exactly how to harness them. The urge to deliberately brew alcohol was a built-in human imperative that bubbled up independently across totally unconnected prehistoric cultures. Alcohol performs a functional sociological role that food alone cannot. It acts as a unique social lubricant, loosening people up and bonding rival groups of strangers into a cooperative unit. Carving and driving 10-ton stone pillars across a hill in Turkey required massive, coordinated crowds. Those crowds needed to be kept happy, motivated, and willing to work together. But those massive alcohol-fueled feasts created a logistical breaking point. Simply foraging for wild grain could not reliably provide enough raw material to sustain the gatherings. Humans were forced to invent agriculture and settle down specifically to ensure the supply of beer would not run out. Stone Age beer was thick, cloudy, and gritty compared to modern drinks, but it delivered the social bonding effect those groups needed, a process that later civilizations deeply embedded into their cultures. The primal desire for communal celebration pushed our ancestors to invent farming. Farming demanded permanent settlements, which gave us cities, roads, and modern society. The modern urge for a drink at the end of a long day is not a personal flaw. You are honoring an 11 million-year-old evolutionary tradition that built the world.